Nirmal, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can we just try the slide presentation? Can we just try what before? Would you mind?
No problem. Bhavesh, can you get Matilda share screen and also see that particular logging?
So do I share the screen? How do I do? Share the screen.
You can share the screen now.
Okay, now.
Yes, please.
No, wait. I have to open my presentation, which is here. How do I do? Do I have to put in presentation mode? I think.
Yes, full screen mode.
Can you see?
No, you have to share the screen. Click on the green share screen icon.
Wait. Wait. Okay, what can I do? Wait. I don't know how to do it. It is here. This.
Yes, you can now just make it full screen. Slideshow. Perfect.
Does it work now?
Yes, perfect. That's good.
So let me just see. Okay, can you see everything is okay?
Yes. Are there any videos that you need to show?
No, it's only pictures and writing. So it's text. I have 40 minutes. And Nirmal, as you're sharing me, can you please tell me when it's 5 minutes to the end?
Yeah. So Bhavesh, can you explain her how do you need to inaugurate that particular link?
What you will have to do, ma'am, is you have that link. So in your browser, you will have to open that link on the IFNR website.
I was listening to Professor Nirmal and I already opened. So I have to open and share the screen or what?
Yes, that time you have to share that screen there.
Just now show it what is to be done, Bhavesh. You can just look at that.
Yes. So if you already have that open in the browser, you can just share the screen, that particular browser screen.
So I have it open. So
again, the same share screen, select that window and then again share.
I've lost you.
You will have to go back to Zoom, that share screen icon, the green icon.
Yeah, I know I am there, but I don't know what is happening to the image below. So, okay, luckily we tried before because let me see why it's not showing. It takes time to go in. Okay, here I have. Okay, it is here. So what I have to do is go back here, share the screen. I am there, but it is black. Can you see it now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so then what I have to do, I finish my presentation, then I go into here.
Yes, there is this, you can see view resources. You have to click on that. Now you will have to scroll a little down. Yeah, any of these icons you can click on.
What do we do? Mobility.
Now here you select no in the top. and you can put your email ID.
Okay.
One time you will have to log in.
But why do I have to do this? I mean,
I have already registered you here. So just for you to see how the flow is, to see each of the screens, the tests, there is a one-time login that is required. So I've already registered you there. You can just put your email ID and the password is IFNR, all small.
but I don't understand what is ICF model links. There's not a model. I don't know what you mean.
This is the inauguration of this website by you.
Yeah, but what the ICF classification? What is ICF model link? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Nirmal. So
This is Dr. Urvashi. We worked on this. The whole concept was, you'll see as it unfolds, that the instruments that we have selected, or the scales and the tests that have been selected, then based on the ICF classification, using these 3 key references, the linkages to the codes, we have tried to link to the codes which are in the ICF model, and link each of the tests or the scales to the code which is given in the ICF checklist. And these are the references that we use to understand the whole linking mechanism.
okay, I will say a few words, and maybe Nirmal, you present this, because I don't know I don't know this website. So I will say this is the test prepared by the Indian Federation for their use.
Professor, I will be doing a presentation in the beginning, which will explain all these things, how we arrived at it and what we have done. What we require from you, madam, is just if you could click. So that's the inauguration. You've opened it up for us, for everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just open this and then you work on this. I don't do anything. And then, okay.
It's an honor for us that you are going to be the first person to click it open, and then people will use it.
Thank you so much. Although, as I say, any use of ICF should be regulated by the WHO if you're going to use WHO material or something. So, I mean, I don't know anything about the site, so I let you do it. I mean, anything you want to do is okay, and you will deal with the WHO. I mean, I don't want to do that. So, okay, I will inaugurate your website and then you will speak about it. I don't do anything about that. Okay.
So thank you for flagging that for us.
Yeah, thank you to you.
After this
but there is also, I think you should mention to this, there is an ICFeducation.org, which is also useful to put in here. There's knowledge for all repository. Okay. And I think this linking that you have been doing is useful, although it's not in the spirit of the ICF, that is biopsicosocial and broad. The only real assessment for the ICF is who does. So all the others are things that can measure things, but they're not really ICF. They link to the different items or domains of the ICF. So, okay, but anyway, I'm not discussing this now. So
no, I think that's very important, and I'll just start my video. So, Professor, I think thank you so much for bringing that up. And you know, and I'll tell you the reason why we pushed it for 5th September as in my presentation. But it's a work in progress. So it's like we'll do this, and then we're going to Dr. Alaknanda is also here, and we were going to reach out to you to understand. So we'd really appreciate if you can give us all these critical remarks, because it's a work in progress. We will go around and change all that.
Yeah, okay. Tell you the truth, I mean, I'm really working with the WHO. Any initiative, national initiative is welcome. Yeah. But it has to be regulated with the WHO concerning copyrights and everything. And conceptually speaking, as I say, I do work with the ICF and ICF.org and ICFeducation.org that is providing education. This could be another national effort to disseminate the knowledge of ICF.
That would be wonderful. We take your guidance. We'll go through it now, and maybe, because if we need the regulations and the permissions, we'll take off that column right now and then work with you, get permissions, and then put it back up again.
I mean, I think it would be safer.
No, absolutely, I agree with you.
to share things so that as I was mentioning to Nirmal, everybody's free to use everything, but once you put on web, then it becomes official. Then you might need things that have different, I mean, you can use it whatever you want for your clinic or whatever. Once you put it there, you take responsibility what you put there. And I think maybe some passage in the middle might be safer.
I think you and Dr. Banerjee is people we are looking forward to and guiding us about whether what we've done is.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. I mean, from what I saw, I mean, I just saw it now. I think it's wonderful. But just that these nuance that sometimes can make heavy, very good works just because it's tiny little things that need to be just sort of some oil in the mechanism to make them go.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you to you for the invitation. We have 1 minute. I mean, Bhavesh, Dr. Thakur, I mean, what do we have to do now? Nirmal speaks and then I do.
Yeah, Dr. Surya will start. Just 1 minute. Dr. Banerjee, would you just like to check your slide share once before we have the beginning of the session? Yeah, perfect. Are there any videos in this? You're muted, doctor. Okay.
Okay.
So good afternoon, everybody. Am I audible to everybody, Bhavesh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I welcome you for the special webinar today on ICF model in neurorehabilitation. And this is something which is IFNR has taken, and Urvashi is definitely going to give you much more about what are the thoughts and how IFNR feel that people in India, the students and those who are working in the research area should get benefited from the various scale which are available at various places to be available at one library sort of thing, which we are going to build up and make for everybody. So today I have none other than Matilda Leonardi. She is my colleague at WFNR. We have been known together for many years, and she is a neurologist and pediatrician with a director of neurology, public health disability unit, and Coma Research Center. She is director of Italian WHO Collaborative Center Research Branch, Vesta. Bhavesh, can you have her slide, please? And she also is founded IRCCS Institute of Milan, where she is the head there, and she's also co-chair of WHO Functioning and Disability Reference Group. She has worked on many projects, and she's very critical about what she says, as I have seen her over past many years in WFNR. We have been worked on a couple of projects together, and I have really pleasure to have her here. Before she speaks, let Urvashi introduce this further subject, and I will introduce Alaknanda Banerjee just before our lecture. Urvashi, please.
Yeah, I'm going to start sharing the screen, Bhavesh. So if you can allow me to do that. This introduction slide, if you can stop sharing, and then I can share the screen.
Yeah, 1 second. Are you able to share now?
You haven't taken off this slide. You haven't exited from the introduction slide.
The Matilda's introduction, can you?
It's not me doing it. Do I have to start?
Just 5 minutes, Matilda.
Yeah. So is Dr. Thakur who has to take out this slide, I understand.
So Bhavesh, you have to stop.
I'm just trying to do that. My icons are not showing here. The cursor is just not showing. 1 second.
I think I'll just, before I start even sharing the screen, maybe I can start talking a little bit about this little journey we've had. Okay, can I start now sharing this?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
What has happened? Just a second.
Hi. Hi, Dr. Urvashi. How are you?
Very well, Gagandeep. Thank you. Thank you for joining in.
Hi, Nirmal.
So, to all of you who've joined in, this is about sharing a little journey we've had, which started essentially on 23rd June, and today is the 5th of September. So you can see it was, it's fairly intense. It's 6 weeks since we started, and we've landed up with what we're doing today. And therefore, right at the very outset, I want to say, and you'll see this journey and how we all got involved and how it began. But it has been rather quick. And therefore, we right at the beginning would like to say as a disclaimer that we're putting this up today because we have Professor Leonardi. We have the honor of her coming in to kind of inaugurate and give us a talk on ICF. But we will be working out the little rough edges and all the permissions and other things as we go along. So actually it may go live for everybody else about a week or 10 days later. So what is this journey? How did it begin? What have we done? So why have we selected today, 5th September? And why did we go crazy, you know, trying to meet this deadline of 5th September, working up to midnight last night also? Is because today, 5th September in India, as we all know, is considered and called as Teachers' Day. The second president of India, Dr. Radhakrishnan of independent India, was a scholar. He was considered one of the greatest scholars in 20th century India and a professor of philosophy. And he was in fact one of the first Indians to hold a professorial chair in the Oxford University. And it is said that when he became the president of India, his students came to him and said, "We would like to celebrate your birthday." And he said, you know, don't celebrate my birthday. Why don't we use this day, the 5th September, to acknowledge all teachers across the country and make it a day of acknowledgement? And that's how it came to be celebrated as Teachers' Day. And so why did we think of doing this today? Professor Radhakrishnan wrote that a life of joy and happiness is possible only on the basis of knowledge. So it is a day for us in India where knowledge is to be shared and a day to acknowledge people who will share knowledge with us. And therefore, we thought it was an appropriate day to talk about this journey we have had to create a repository, which we have titled or named as the Knowledge for All Repository, or the CAR repository for IFNR. Repository is defined very loosely as a place where things can be stored and found. And our initial concept as a group was that we should have some space on the website where knowledge, that means tools, evaluation tools that people can use, should be stored and easily accessed by all. So the IFNR tools repository was the outcome of an interdisciplinary concerted effort. So it's all the disciplines came together to collate and store information about the various important evaluation tools, which are very useful in neurorehabilitation practice and research. And I must add the last part, specifically for India. So that was one of our goals. And why was this an important goal? Is because we have been a lot dependent on a number of Western tools, which are not necessarily culturally appropriate for our country. And we've struggled over the years to work towards adaptations, translations, and all. So we really wanted to look that in the country, which tools, which have been there either indigenously created or in the Western populations, which have references for our population, which have been used here, and put that out there for our clinicians to use. So what was the whole rationale of going down this journey? Why did we want to undertake this journey? So we've realized over time that neurorehabilitation now in India is no longer in the nascent state. And there is an increasing interest in the professionals and a growing demand of services in the country. IFNR is now becoming the apex body for neurorehabilitation in India. And during the lockdown, when IFNR had the webinars, which were a huge success, it connected the interdisciplinary neurorehabilitation professionals across the country, with sometimes over 5,000 people logging in for the webinars. So we found that in these webinars, there were a lot of queries about evaluation tools, and also a wide variety of tools were discussed by the clinicians or the experts who gave the talks. There's also a shortage of trained professionals and a need for this interdisciplinary dialogue. So we felt the time was ripe for us to have something, some space where we could discuss as interdisciplinary groups about the tools we use and have a common kind of language when we use these tools and share resources. It would give us easy access to valid tools that have been vetted by senior experts. It'll be good for the young professionals. It would be a common set of tools we could possibly use if we come together for research purposes, and IFNR could take on the role of a knowledge provider. Those were the advantages. So what was our vision when we started this? The key vision was about the patient. Can we benefit the patient? Can we become really good professionals who use robust tools in our evaluation and ultimately benefit the patient? And what would be the mission, therefore, would be to create this repository. And most important, as you can see, the last 2 points was to include tools that would be relevant in our context. And now this last point, which is a bit controversial, or we have to look at it carefully and really bring it out in a careful manner, is how do we link this to the ICF model? I'll give you the background of why this happened. When we started discussing the tools as a group, we found that most of the professionals talked about the tools, and those tools were clearly ones which were for evaluation of impairment. It was kind of a wake-up call for the professionals, and in one session, we all sort of kind of reflected that most of our tools that we were using commonly were just looking at impairment. And we had not really thought about activities, in activity participation, and all those aspects which come up in the ICF model, which are very important if you want to think holistically of the patient and do a comprehensive evaluation. So the question that came up in everyone's mind was, can we in some way use this model, this comprehensive holistic approach to the patient, and somehow link it to the kind of tests that we are putting up, and try to put in the repository tests that would tap into even these dimensions which are there in the ICF, which have hitherto been neglected by most clinicians and others. And that's why we set it up as a mission. There's a lot we have to do there and understand here and clarify before we wrap our heads around it. But I'll share with you what we've done and how we've thought about this. So we want a disclaimer which says that we are not really putting out tests here which are ours. These are some of them are copyrights. We tried to look for tests which were in the public domain and there was free access for. If you want to use this, you have to go to the original references and talk to the authors and get permissions. It's very, very important. You can't use it like that. Also, we had selected tools initially now. We have about 124 tests that we have kind of uploaded right now. We plan to have many, many, many more. I'll tell you how we selected. And these will be updated at regular intervals. So it's a very organic process. It's going to keep growing with suggestions, with ideas, with reviews, and it'll keep bringing out more and more new things. And we also thought that we would like to know what's happening in India. Which are the various institutes, academic institutes, or students who are working on indigenous tools? There are PhD theses, there are MSc theses, which have not been published. Maybe we can all collaborate and think of bringing out this data too. And so we've asked people to write into us. Now, how did we go about this? So let's look at it as stepwise what we did. The first aspect was creating the team. So the team has been drawn from 30, and they comprise of 30 members who come from all parts of the country. This was important for us, that it should be representative. India is a very vast country, and there are different ways that people approach things across the country. So we drew people, professionals from across the country, and they belong to academic institutes, teaching hospitals, and were involved in both clinical practice and research. I must point out that the task force consists of a very young team. They are mid-career professionals who are extremely enthusiastic and want to work on this. The second was the selection of tests. So first thing we told all these clinicians and researchers was that are routinely used in your institutions by your students and by everyone in the country. And also look at, in the webinars, what were the tests that were mentioned. Then try to understand if some of them are relevant for our Indian context and draw up your list. And with that, we finally came to about 124 tests. More are being added on every day as we are reviewing them. And then we also created the kind of headings under which these tests would be analyzed, what kind of data we'd be putting for each of the tests. We had to specify in which domain that these tests went into. Would they go into a cognition domain? Would they go into a speech domain? Would they go into mobility, motor? What would they go into? So specifying these domains initially with the brainstorming, most of the people put up suggestions which they said would be user-friendly. That means as a clinician, what is the terminology that we are used to using? And we would put up those as domains. However, as we went along and this desire came to understand the ICF model items and the domains which are in the ICF, and the understanding that how do we bring in all aspects, began the journey of seeing how could we link with the ICF domains as well as the ICF codes. Could we do that was the question that we had in our mind, and I'll talk to you about that. And so for that, first we looked at the ICF checklist. And as you can see here, we looked at that, the domain headings, which were like consciousness, orientation, others, and like voice and speech functions, etc. We also looked at, in the part 2, that you had domains with codes, which was communication, mobility, self-care, domestic life, etc., etc. Then what we did was to create this kind of a table where these are the domains which we selected as the titles for our domains, which were based on our brainstorming of what is clinically people are used to this terminology. And we tried to see in the ICF checklist if there was a parallel, either the same word for it, or in some cases, for all these were coming under cognitive for us. Instead of seeing, we put the term visual. For vestibular, we put the term balance. In this way, kind of creating the linkages to even what was the terminology that was used and what were the codes that were there for each of this. After we created this kind of a master sheet with our domains and tests, we realized that we had almost 21 domains that we could, out of which about 18 or 19 linked with the ICF domains, and the others were which we added later on, like the disease-specific scales, etc. With these 21 domains, then the next step was, how do we put in the codes, and if we can put in the codes? So we looked at this, the research literature out there, which talked about it being, okay, if you're looking at assessment instruments which are simple, you can find the ICF classification in terms of which domain, and you can find out also the code for it. But it is very complex when you go to scales like the quality of life scales, and to make those conversions, you have to look at what is called the linking rules, which were published by Cieza et al. From 2002 onwards. So then we went into the research and we looked at all these publications which came from this group right up to 2016, where they gave the examples of how you put the codes for each item of a test that you do. Now theirs was based on an item analysis. What we did was that we looked at our tests. Before I come to that and show you that slide, we then went and started putting in our data with also the Indian references. So this was the kind of Excel sheet that we were creating. Now this was for the speech pathology and audiology group. They knew that their test would come under this icon, for example. They picked up a test, there was a description, there'll be an author and test link. And for this, they went into the test and looked at whether these items were present, which fulfilled the code in the ICF checklist. And there were some from activity and participation. There were some from the impairment items. And therefore they put these codes over here. In this manner, analyzing each of the tests, the relevant codes were put down. I must say that we haven't found tests which go into the E codes, which are the environment codes. and we are still planning to add those at a later point. We also then, in this Excel sheet, had a column which were the India relevant links. That means for each of these tests, what were the references available of these tests being used in India, whether they were translations, adaptations, normative data, etc., etc. So in this manner, the Excel sheets were created for each and every one of the tests by each of the groups to give us the total. And finally, we created the web page. And that is what Professor Leonardi is going to open up for us. And again, as Professor Leonardi very kindly pointed out in the beginning, that many permissions will be required, talking to the WHO, getting again expert opinions. We have today with us other experts also on the ICF, who we hope will guide us with this concept that we have created. And then we can finally refine it and put it out there in the public domain for people to use. So Dr. Radhakrishnan said, one more beautiful quote from his is, when we think we know, we cease to learn. So we are not saying here we know and we've done the perfect thing. I think we've embarked on a journey where we want knowledge, we want to share it correctly, and we want it to be useful for all. So we don't know, and we are still on the learning curve. And there are many, many more miles that we have to walk before we'll come to the perfect web page. This is the beginning. Thank you so much for all of you for being here today. And I'll stop sharing this right now.
Thank you, Urvashi. And we continue. It was an excellent hard work. I can see that last 2 months, many meetings which has placed this, and we still need to continue on that. I welcome Professor Gagandeep Singh, who is the Secretary of Indian Academy of Neurology and has always been supportive for activities done by the IFNR as well as Neurorehab subsection of Indian Academy of Neurology. With that note, I invite Professor Matilda Neolardi. Bhavesh, once again, would request you to put her slide for the introduction so that she can take over. All right, so Matilda has already shared her screen. Wonderful. Matilda, you need to unmute your mic.
This, and then this again, and this. Okay. Here and here. Is okay now?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
First of all, thank you to Professor Nirmal Surya for inviting me. As he said, we have been working together, but I think that we do a wonderful profession because it not only allows us to share scientific things, but also to share friendship, which I think is even more important sometimes than just working together. And that's my pleasure to be here and to have the honor to inaugurate the work in this special day. I didn't know that this was a Teacher's Day, and all of us, I think, after a certain age, have the responsibility to bring to others what we have been learning and what we liked. So I'm sharing with you what I've been learning, what I've been working, and also what I like to do in my profession, in daily profession. I'm, as it was said, I am the co-chair, beside my role in the National Institute of Neurology, of the Functional Disability Reference Group of the WHO, and we deal with the ICF together with Professor Ha-Young Lee from Korea. And I come from Milan, and I think that the recent epidemics brought us to a different perspective of looking at health. And I think this is where ICF and functioning can play a very important role, and I'll tell you more in a minute. But I would say that talking about the issue of functioning in rehabilitation, we all have to know that biomedicine has had its role for the past 100 years. And the role was that, in a sense, biomedicine was considering the human being as cars. And sometimes they break and then they could be repaired. And this was working with some infectious disease, like the bacterial infectious disease, or some diseases that can be treated by surgery. You have a car, you repair it. You have a disease and you treat it. However, as we all know, many of the diseases that are facing now in the world are bringing new scenarios in which biomedicine alone is not enough. And in many of our neurological disorders, we can say, for example, take Alzheimer or others, we can say, where is the disease? But in our neurological disorders, we cannot. So we don't know where is the disease, what to cut, or what to add. And this makes biomedicine, and it shows the limits, besides the several very good things, it also shows the limits of biomedicine. There's also another issue that is going on in many parts of the world, including your country. There is an epidemiological transition, meaning that there is a very big change in the disease patterns, and there is an increase in non-communicable disease compared to the previous epidemiological scenario where malnutrition and non-communicable disease were the leading causes. As you all know, in fact, more than 50% of the world now lives with chronic diseases, and within the chronic disease, I also add our neurological patients that are suffering very often with disease that lasts for many, many, many years. Chronic conditions are, according to the WHO definition, diseases that don't pass from person to person, and they are of long duration and generally of slow progression. And I think this is, we all know, something that we have to face and we have to handle, having different perspective in health. There's also another issue that is called the age quake, that is the progressive aging of population, which brings to a scenario that is very big. This was the idea in 2012, how much is the proportion of population over age 60, the darker the red, the more the population is. And this is the provision that we have for 2050. As you see, more than 1/3 of the world will have a lot of people with an increasing aging patterns. And there is a global strategy that is happening this year. And last week, they just approved the new strategy for aging and health. And in any case, whatever is your age of aging, there is a point in which it is normal that you have a decline in your health state. And this goes with aging, and it goes for male and female, and this is the different dots represent different countries. And as you can see, the declining functioning is part of the aging process. It's something natural that is going to make health something that changes over time. And it is where the rehabilitation and good quality of life can limit the decline. In the older age, to maintain independence and prevent disability, you can do a lot with the rehabilitation so as to delay the decline in functioning of people. And these big scenarios that I just presented very briefly to you is bringing us to the pressing need for the ICF. What is ICF? I think most of you know it. However, it is the WHO classification of functioning, disability, and health, which has been released by the WHO in 2001. And why ICF it is relevant? Well, it had a long story before becoming ICF. And this year, I'm happy to share with you that we're going to celebrate the next new step. It started in 1980 with the classification of impairment, disability, and handicap, which was, by the way, needed upon request of Philip Wood. He was a rheumatologist, and he was saying, my patients don't have only disease, they have a different set of disease where the classification of disease doesn't work. So there has been a long way till 2001. And in this 19 years from the adoption of the ICF, many things have happened. And I think we have just seen what you have been doing with your classification car. I think that this is the idea that things evolve, things change. However, for the time being, ICF is the only classification of functioning that is available internationally, that is translated internationally and validated internationally. And this year, in 1 month from now, in October, we're going to release the ICF 2020. That is the updated version, because like all the classification, you need to change words, to change concepts. So the new version will come out in October, and it will have all the updates that went on and on during these years from the ICF pathway. That ICF 2020 will incorporate also the codes of the ICF children and youth. So we will go back to one version of the ICF 2020 this October. ICF, however, is not the only WHO classification and should not be considered alone. I think that in India, for the classification of disease, you use the ICD-10. However, the WHO has been releasing the ICD-11, and together the two classifications classify different things. The ICD classifies the diseases, while the ICF classifies functioning and environmental factor, and together they provide a profile of functioning. In 2021, the WHO will also release the third very important classification, that is the International Classification of Health Intervention. We are also working on it and finalizing it, and there are a lot of interventions that play a role in rehabilitation, and they've been classified in the areas of functioning. You might already use some classification of health intervention, mostly in surgery, but this will be something unique. Together, the three classification will be a common, will create a common background and a common language internationally speaking. So far, ICF has been translated in more than 70 languages. This means that the classification speaks a universal language and can be understood in different countries of the world. And in the ICF, disability is not understood as something that starts when you finish to be healthy. There is a continuum. When do you start disability? When is disability starting? And this is continuum, this lowering in functioning, is also defined by the issue that disability is not only the disease that you have, it's the disease that you have, the diagnosis that you have in the context in which you are. Meaning that the interaction between the health condition and the environmental factors is, and for us working with chronic patients, is very, very good, because sometimes we can work on the patient, and rehabilitation, this is what we do, but we can also act on the environment to decline the disability. So in a sense, the idea is that comparing disability versus the health problem, and here I make some example, if you do this kind of scheme, you can say that you have many, many different cases or diagnoses, blindness, flu, epilepsy, HIV positive, but what is the disability? And if you look at the second part, you can have, for example, a person with flu cannot work for 10 days. Person with epilepsy is not allowed to drive. Meaning that the diagnosis alone, without these elements of functioning, is not providing you the idea of disability. The health problem has to be well diagnosed and well treated, but sometimes this is not enough to diminish the disability of the person. And the disability category had a long evolution, a long time. And we can say that we start from the past 2 centuries for defining disability. And in the beginning, if you look at the English Poor Law of the 1834, they were saying the disabled are the sick, the insane, the defective, the aged, and the infirm. But if you go in the different centuries, we can see that there has been an evolution. However, it has been very, very much medically oriented. So disabled equal having a disease. Disabled equal having an impairment. And there's been an evolution in this disability category that I would say have found its big, say, change in the last 20 years. Certainly with the publication of the ICF, but also where disability is an umbrella term for impairment, activity, limitation, and participation. And it denotes the negative aspect of the interaction between individual with a health condition and individual context. I think this definition of disability is the one that ICF gives us because it classifies all these elements. But there is also the UN Convention for the Right of People with Disability, which also defines the who are the person with disability, and is a bit different from the ICF because it includes long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments, which in interaction with various barriers might hinder the participation on equal basis with others. These two definitions are those that are actually, they would say, the modern one. Beside the definition of and evolution of disability, there is also an evolution of health, because in this century, health is operationalized with ICF. You can really define what is health. It's not the absence of disease, it's something more, which is related to this interaction, which I think, and I would suggest that we keep in mind if we want to sort of find what can we do. What can you do for coronavirus? You can treat the person, yes, but it is an issue of organizing the environment to improve the health of people. And I think environment sometimes has nothing to do with the individual health. It is something that you can think before the disease appears. It is something that you can plan well ahead the emergency comes. So the conversion for health and disability along the history brought the role of ICF as the conciliator of these two lines. So the non-fatal health comes as disability, health state then less than perfect health is disability, and in a sense, these two lines of health and disability comes across together with the ICF. What is ICF? Is a list of categories that classify the universe of human functioning, and the conceptual model for understanding health and disability is provided by the ICF. And why we do need it? Because we need a common language, and we need to count and report. If I ask how many people with disability do you have in India, it depends to whom I'm asking it. I can have very rough numbers, and they might not represent the real numbers. And in a sense, this is crucial for planning. If you have no idea what are we talking about, we usually say 10% of population has disability. What does it mean 10%? 10% is less healthy, or 10% is only those who have a diagnosis, only those who have one diagnosis, and so on. The structure of the ICF is very clear. There is the functioning and the disability and the contextual factor. What in the functioning, we have the body function, the body structures, activity and participation, and in each chapter we have different domains. And in the contextual factor, the ICF is not classifying personal factors, but you have several environmental factors defined with the letter E. The alphanumeric organization of the classification remains the same all over the languages, meaning that body function is B, body structure is S, activity and participation is D, and environment is E. And these letters remain the same, whatever is the language. What changes in the translation is the definition. So the ICF conceptual model tells us that we don't have a minority model. The disabled are not a different social group from the non-disabled. I mean, if you look at the level of functioning, then of course, the severity of disability can change. And if you need to plan some intervention, it is clearly true that when you plan intervention, you might wish to put a threshold. But one point for us as doctors is to classify people on the basis of functioning, and we don't classify people, we classify the functioning profiles. And different is saying all those with this profile X will have some remuneration or some advantages. The conceptual model of ICF is multidimensional, meaning that you put together the different things that you comprise the person and the environment. And as I thank you, the colleague that has been presenting that you had difficulty in doing your repository in finding environmental assessment tools. But this might be because you come mostly from the medical world. If you were in the social science world, you would have had more environment assessment, assessing the social life, the physical environment and so on, than medical assessment. So I would say that is why ICF brings naturally the interdisciplinary work together, because we are really used from our medical school to look at the body function, body structure, and sometimes activity, but we have problems when we go into participation, which is what sometimes really counts for the person. Do you go to school because of your health condition? Are you prevented to work because of your health condition? Are you prevented to have a family because of your health condition? Sometimes this is even more relevant than the diagnosis of Parkinson or of epilepsy per se. And so when we look at the ICF perspective, in looking at the person and the environment, the context is included. And the context is many, many things. When we say environment, I don't know, English is not my language. In Italian, we have so many granulation of the words. When we say environment, in environment, you can have many, many, many things. And this is what ICF says. You can have products and technology, the natural human environment, the support and the relationship, the attitudes of people, and the services and policies that are around you. And each of them can be facilitator or barrier, and each of them is changing your functioning. So functioning is not only about what the person cannot do, but also what the person can do. I think this change is also something that, if in the Teacher's Day, we should remember. We usually tend to teach what is the negative, what person cannot do, what is the missing, what is the problem, what is the defect. And at the end, what counts, and people in rehabilitation know very well, it is what people, despite what is missing, can do. So the despite is, I think, the rule to move from a classification of the negative elements towards a classification of the positive elements. And in this sense, the issue that it is very relevant, we know, I mean, we are aware that capturing the impact of a health condition in terms of functioning is old. There are many functioning measures like activity of daily living, the Bartel scale, or the AIDL, or if you go into specific diseases, for example, for Parkinson, you have condition-specific functioning instruments. However, and this is the exercise we have to do, often these instruments do not capture functioning as a multidimensional experience, and they remain in data silos because they cannot, they do not have international data standard, and they cannot be compared. So they remain as data that you collect for your own use. You cannot share them. They use different languages and maybe different inputs. There is also another problem that in the different countries nowadays, we have the problem in definition, because according to the different area where you come from, you can also define people according to specific categories. We have people with disability, people with chronic condition, people with non-communicable disease, old people, aging people, but all of these categories, if we go with the lenses of functioning, are in fact the same population. They are just divided for political or economical reasons. So what it is important is defining a profile of disability and functioning, addressing people needs. And we go to a delicate part of the ICF, because the people needs might vary, and sometimes we don't consider them because we have only a limited amount of time. If you have 40 minutes to treat a patient and you don't see all the patients, and you see only the patients who have money to come and visit you in some private health insurance, I mean, we are detaching people from their context, and we are considering them for a while. I just received from India a letter from a colleague who was asking me about the neurological complication of COVID. I have opened a neuro-COVID section in my institute studying the long-term neurological complication of COVID. And the point is that this person clearly had a peripheral neuropathy, and then I asked for to see the results of the electromyography, and the answer was the person has no money and the person cannot perform it. So full stop. Either you understand what he has from the description of symptoms, or there's no possibility for her to get further investigation. So the environment plays a major role. and what are the needs of the person and the service outcomes. It's something that ICF can help us to define, because the biopsychosocial model, biopsicosocial is the person in the environment. It's an holistic approach to the person. It is something that allows us to define disability as the evaluation that we can do of the health, so of the diagnosis, of course, but of the environment. There are many, many, many barriers in all areas of life that can, so maybe for us it could be also too much, because we say, okay, but we work in our limited medical area. How can we intervene on education, employment, social and political life, community participation? And as you know, all of them are determinants of health. How can we work on all these barriers? And in any case, these barriers are also related to many other things that have to play something with politics, with cultures, with attitudes. And this brings to several areas of barriers. You can have lack of accessibility, inadequate funding, lack of consultation and involvement, lack of data. So these things can frighten us, but it's also relieving us. Sometimes the health is related to so many other factors that we could play with others to improve population health. So the negative consequences of barriers on health also tell us that people with a health condition, so it's a double arrow interaction. Sometimes people with health condition can have lower educational achievement or lower level of employment. Poverty is very much related to health, and equally, health is very much related to poverty. And also poor health outcomes are related. In a sense, India, as much as Italy, and as well as other 180 countries, ratified the Convention on the Rights of People with Disability. And it says that people have to be able to participate in society on an equal basis with others. So one request that we as professionals can do, we can try to identify which are the barriers. And sometimes barriers can be changed. And this is something that can decline disability and increase functioning. And in thinking like this, we can take the UN Convention for the Right of People with Disability as a frame that helps us to understand disability as a human right. So it's a frame for policy development. However, even if India ratified the convention, and so India is saying that everybody has the right to work. The point is that people don't want to have the right to work, they want a job. And the difference between tell that everybody has the right to health, then tell everybody has the right to access health services, as you can understand, it's enormous. No country, no politician will ever say that people don't have the right to work and don't people have the right to health. But these rights remain paper rights if they don't become rights with a meaning, with an action. So in a sense, I would say that, for example, many other elements can play a role in functioning. And they might not be related to our work, but might have a key role. I know that India has a strong family tradition, but as in many, many countries of the world, family might not be enough because you can have problems of all kinds. But what we have been proving along the years is that social network, for example, increase health and improves healthy aging. We've been proving this also with my team of researchers in a big project in Europe upon 10,000 people in 4 different countries, Italy, Spain, Finland, and Poland. We have been showing that, of course, when you grow old nowadays in most of European countries, social networks decline with aging, and family is the facilitator everywhere. But when family is not there, what people with any disability can do, what can happen? In one of the teleconferences that I'm having weekly with the WHO, I am in a network of neurologists working on health after COVID. There was a colleague from Ghana who was telling us we were finally able to have our first intensive care unit in Ghana because of COVID. And then I asked, okay, once people go out of the intensive care, what do you do? And the colleague said, well, we send them back home because we have no rehabilitation. We have been putting money into the intensive care. We couldn't do also the rehabilitation. Just to tell you that Then you bring back to family a person who is paraplegic after 1 month in the intensive care because of COVID. And of course, family is not enough. So you have to think things before. And that is where rehabilitation and the thinking about rehabilitation comes. As you know, we are in the decade now of the call for action of the rehabilitation call for action of the WHO, which defines what is rehabilitation as a set of interventions designed to optimize functioning and reduce disability. As you can see, anybody could need rehabilitation, and the intervention can be very different. Rehabilitation can do intervention addressing impairments or activity limitation, and this is what usually the whole world of rehabilitation does. However, there might be actions, and this is also what rehabilitation is able to do, intervention that provide assistive technology and provide environmental facilitator, and technology can help a lot. And they also have an impact on functioning. So rehabilitation is highly person-centered, and the goals and preferences should be shared with the user, what you want to do and how you want to go. So an ICF-based rehabilitation plan helps us to share a common language that is understood by the person, by the team members, by the patient and the family. So once we use the same language and we try to identify and also to granularize the problem, some problems belong to the body function or to the body structures. They create and they cause activity limitation, but then there's also something in the environment that is helping us to be identified and helps the patient and the family to be looked as acting on the disease and acting on the person, but not being the disability per se. So the interaction is what we have to learn to read with the ICF. So in a sense, today we are sharing, and I thank you, the Indian Federation for Neurorehabilitation, and particularly Professor Nilma Surya, to help me to share with you the culture of functioning. It's a culture that says that nobody should be left behind, because the common aim of our work as a health professional is participation of everybody. So functioning is the future of any debate that we should take when we speak about health. And I think that the UN Convention of the Right of People with Disability and the ICF can help to define what is functioning. However, going back to Africa, it's a continent I love, there is an ethical issue that I've been learning when I've worked in Africa, and is a key question that ICF brings with it that we have to always keep in mind. I was given this question by a young boy when I was testing the ICF. I've been working on ICF since 1995 when I was developing it. I'm called in my country the mama of ICF. And I think I feel like this because I feel I can share with you many, many stories for each code. And there was one story from Zambia that came to me when I was testing the ICF. I did the profile of a boy, and he was with a severe health condition in this village of Zambia, and I did the profile. And then when I was going away from him, having had all this profile, he called me back and said, "Hey, doctor, now that you know everything, now that you know my barriers, now that you know all the problems I have around me, what are you going to do for me?" I think this is the ethical question that you have to bring in mind. It's not only important to know things, because knowledge is bringing with it the need to do something. If you ignore it, if you put things under the carpet, if you just don't see them, you're not obliged to do something. But if you see things, if you identify the problems and you don't act, then there is a big ethical issue that is something that we should, as doctors, as professionals, we were the lucky. We had the opportunity to study. We had the opportunity to learn. We had the opportunity also to think together, as this seminar this morning is bringing us the opportunity to share things. But we all have an ethical thing inside. Once we know things, what are we going to do for the people that we meet? How can we be facilitators and not barrier? I think this is all. And I thank you very much for sharing the morning with me. And there are several elements that you can have. And I really thank you for bringing us the opportunity to share this. I think that ICF is also bringing a community of committed people that thinks that despite we were the lucky, those who could study, we have now, being the lucky, the duty of doing something for others more than ever. Thank you so much.
Absolutely fantastic, Matilda. Rightly, they call you the mama of ICF, and I'm sure it was very enlightening for our team of task force member and all those who are already attending. There is a time for a few questions, and I would request task force member, if they have some specific question for Mama, please go ahead and ask her one by one. So there is a question come for you. So that's a thank you. Is there any question from somebody? Either put it in question answer or raise the hand, and so that you can unmute your mic and ask Matilda. Matilda is committed to leave out of her city, that is Milan. In spite of that, she was to fly in the afternoon. She said she will take the lecture in the morning. So I'm highly thankful to her for the commitment she has accepted for us.
Thank you.
So if there is no question for her, I go on to the most.
There is one question.
What is that?
Professor Medela, thank you so much for the insightful presentation. It brings us lots of good things to reflect on when we start looking at building such a framework for an Indian context. So thank you so much for bringing us lots of insights into the ICF domain, especially looking at the neurorehabilitation aspects. My question is related to the systems in place. So Italy is very similar to India, I would say, in terms of how the systems work. Probably Italy is much better compared to an Indian context with systems. So when we try and look at ICF and implementation of ICF, even for looking at an assessment domain, how do we consider systems in place to implement what we try and bring up? So that's the question.
The ICF has been now in its adult age because he turned 18 last year. And I would say that the implementation had many stop and go, because once countries started to look at that, the issue was how do we use it, how do we implement it. I think that what strikes me now is that many countries are now starting to use it for the disability eligibility procedures. So they are trying to use the ICF that per se is not an assessment. It has the HUDAS, that is the disability assessment schedule, that is providing a score. However, the ICF is now starting to be used in several countries for insurance purposes, so that you can classify the problems that you have in a manner that is something that can be then classified in a manner that you can compare. It is used in several countries for disability eligibility. This was, for us, I would say, the Trojan horse to introduce disability, because also many countries don't have the classification of disease. For many countries so far, you also have problems in using the ICD. What we are launching this year in October is the new electronic platform. WHO is launching it to support countries to have an electronic format that is putting together the ICD code. So after you open the ICD code, you have something that comes down and is called functioning profile that is related to the ICF. So once you have the diagnosis, there is a set of a short set of codes that are telling you that there is a functioning problem. So then if you want to measure it, you can add, and this will be electronically provided from October this year to the world. But in terms of implementation, all the countries love ICF. I mean, all the countries love it. From saying that I love it, that I use it, there is a big difference. So, I mean, people love it, not so many use it. So love is not going together with use in many countries. But the disability eligibility is a start, and it has been a lot used in rehabilitation for goal setting, and it is using, this is used, so in specific sectors, it has a wide use. So you can use in your clinic to monitor your work, to goal setting with the people. And there is a lecture that I'm going to do online on the World Federation of Neurorehabilitation in 1 month from now, is that you can set for the different domains some goals, and you can see whether, and you can measure whether you have an improvement. So in rehabilitation, to have all the network and the multidisciplinary team to speak the same language is very much used all over the world. And also it is very much used in children. That is the other group. Why? Because in children, what you very often you don't even have the diagnosis. And you know, for all, imagine all the genetic or the neurodevelopmental diseases, sometimes it's very difficult to have a diagnosis, but it is very good to have a functioning profile because you can identify all the areas that have impairments. So in many countries, and also together with the school, it is used to identify what are the functioning problems that you can act, even if you might not have the diagnosis, because diagnosis can be genetics or difficult to perform. However, the child has cognitive development problems, has motor problems and other problems that don't have a name, but have an impact on the functioning of the child. So there is where we really see internationally a good implementation of the ICF.
Thank you so much, Professor Matilda.
Thank you, Matilda. There is another question from Apurva Puranik, our neurologist from Indore and our colleague at WFNR. As it is important to spread this knowledge about ICF up to primary health worker, what is the status in various parts of India, various parts of the part in India? And also somebody asked whether in 10 minutes, how we need to implement ICF.
Okay, for India, I think that there is after me the presentation from my friend and colleague Aloka that is been working on ICF in India. Well, India is a big country, and as you can imagine, the dissemination of things goes slowly in different areas and might be faster in some sectors. For example, rehabilitation, the people for rehabilitation, and all those who read international scientific literature, they are up to date. We had some meetings. There is the WHO collaborating center in India, and also the regional office is in India, and they're trying to implement ICF, of course. But as I said, India is a big country. You might have areas, and also you are divided in regions. There are some regions where it's most used. There are areas in Bangalore or in Mumbai or in New Delhi that are using it for reporting, but there might be other areas where it's not used. But I also think that you might also decide to work by sectors. If you use in the rehabilitation and neurorehabilitation sectors, it's like a big wave that goes beyond the center point. And each of you should be ambassador of ICF in a sense. So I'm counting on this. How many are you now? 136 ambassadors from India. So that's good. You be ambassador of thinking that listening to the needs of people is, I'm saying, don't speak about a classification. Speak about the people. Start from the people. What are people needs? How you can monitor them? I mean, if we start from books, we will have an ending about it. If we start from the people, we will have possibility to deal with a different approach. And I think this is what ICF is helping.
Thank you, Matilda. I have another important task to be done by you, and along with you, I have Professor Mehndi Ratta. He is the chair of Neurorehab subsection of Indian Academy of Neurology. He has been past president of Indian Academy of Neurology, Indian Stroke Association. Along with him is Professor Gagandeep. So may I request you to kindly inaugurate the web page, and then Urvashi has already shown, but Professor Mehndi Ratta and Gagandeep will be there to inaugurate. And if you have a candle, somebody can light it. I thought Taral had it. So Matilda, can you share your screen, please?
Can you see it?
Yes, we can see. So this is all about the web page which has been created for knowledge for all repository. And if you click on one of those domain, which are, and these are all original artwork based on our Maharashtrian thing, has been created by Taral Nagda. So if you put on the click on the motor, it goes and you say no.
Okay, I have to say no. Okay.
You can log in. You can log in with your email ID and password.
Okay. I don't have a password.
IFNR, all small, IFNR. Hello.
So before putting it, I'm very honored to inaugurate this, and I want to congratulate Dr. Shah, Dr. Surya, and all the team of the 30 people who did it. So very proudly today, 5th of September 2020, the day of Teachers' Day and the day for Remember Your President and anniversary. I, as Matilde Leonardi from Italy, the ICF mama, I would say, is very proud to inaugurate this and congratulate all the Indian friends and colleagues for this. And I think this will be part of the big efforts that we are doing with the ICFeducation.org, which is something that we are working on. And I think this could be something that could go on with a big effort that at national level, many parts of the world are trying to do to share the language. We are billions of people, but every mountain is scaled starting from one step. So my wish for this big step that you've been doing here. So that is it, submit. So congratulations to all of you. Okay. So I think it says, okay, what should I do now? Should I close?
No.
Okay. I think I've been entering this, I've been inaugurating this, and I wish to congratulate all of you for this.
Thank you. Professor Mandiratta.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Matilda. It was wonderful. And
I cannot hear.
We can't hear you, sir.
Sir, please unmute.
We can't hear you, Professor Mandiratta.
No, he's not muted, but I think his connection is unstable.
I cannot hear.
No, we are not able to hear you. So, Professor Gagandeep.
Yeah, what a wonderful past 1 hour. And I think the initiative is really great to have a knowledge repository for all kinds of rehab scales. And this is something I thought sometime back, someone presented me with a book of neurological scales. And I and my residents often refer back to this book, and we see this book. But having this online is itself a great and a commendable effort. I congratulate Dr. Surya and the entire team, Dr. Urvashi, Shah, Dr. Surya, and the entire huge team, which has undertaken this great effort, and wish them the very best in the future. Indeed was a great privilege to listen to the mama of the ICF. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed your lecture. Kind of showed us how our health systems should be in place. I think from that perspective and from an implementation perspective, it was a wonderful lecture. Thank you so much. Thank you for thinking about and asking me to be here for this important event, and really great congratulations to everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Gagandeep Singh. Mandiratta sir, have your voices?
Nirmal, is it audible now? Is it audible?
Yes, perfect.
I'm so sorry for that. There was mix up between the earpod and the speaker. I wish to, first of all, extend grateful thanks to Professor Matilda for giving a wonderful address and inaugurating this. The important component which should be integral part of neurology specialty and other specialties, that's International Classification of Functioning disability health, which is the international standard for framing, describing, recording, and measuring functioning and disability laid down by the WHO. As expressed, this should go percolate down to what Gagan and other way in the one task force also we have done at primary healthcare level, secondary healthcare level, and then maybe in advance where we are running disability boards like in our institute also in the tertiary centers. So once again, congratulations to the whole team, especially Dr. Nirmal Surya, Urushi Shah, under the kind guidance of Professor Matilda. This will go a long way and progress very well, and we'll be there if whatever assistance is required. Once again, thank you very much. And it's a Teachers' Day in India. I say teachers are not only the teachers, but even students are teachers of teachers, and we learn from each other. And thank you everyone, one and all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mandiratta, for sparing your time. Thank you very much. Before I go to the chairperson of various sections of task force, may I request Alaknanda Banerjee, who is here on behalf of ICF of India, to say some word.
Dr. Surya, thank you all. And of course, thank you, Matilda, for actually introducing me and recommending me. Yeah, so my background, I'm a physical therapist by profession, and I was fortunate to be able to make 3 rehab projects in 3 major hospitals of New Delhi, that is Apollo, Fortis, and Max. And I started with the Apollo project in 1995, and you know, and I left Apollo in 2004, and then I did the Fortis project in 2004, and I left in 2006. So, and then, you know, like Max was a 7-star specialty hospital, so super specialty. Now, being as the director of rehabilitation, I really realized that, you know, as a rehab person, you know, it's not just enough. It's just not enough in terms of rehabilitation. A patient is not really rehabilitated totally. And, you know, of course, we were going through, these hospitals were going through the JCI accreditations, you know, the Joint Commission, where the functioning played a very important role. Even if a patient was going through a gallstone surgery, you know, had to be sort of, there had to be an accountability. What was the state of the patient who came to the hospital and what was the state when he went out, right? So, you know, it got me thinking in 2006 and 2007, when I was in Max, that I need to do much more where the continuity of care, you know, for people who are going from the acute care to the subacute or the chronic care into their, you know, into their homes, needed to be taken care of. And it was not happening, you know, in that time. So I had an intern from Holland, you know, she was a physical therapist intern. And then she started seeing my restlessness, you know, what's not happening. I'm not being able to connect. And she said, madam, why don't you look at ICF? So that was the time when we looked at ICF, and I went to Holland in 2007 and did this pre-conference workshop. It was a conference of the World Confederation of Physical Therapy. I attended the workshop, and believe me, you know, I have not looked back after that. It was, as Matilda said, you know, you have to be crazy enough to understand and do ICF, and that comes from the passion, you know, for patient care. Yeah. So ICF is nothing but, you know, you were talking about linking and all, but let's come down. ICF is actually patient care. How
we will hear from you, Professor Alaknanda Banerjee.
Okay,
we'll hear from you in your next lecture. What do you say about the inaugural thing?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was giving the lecture. Okay.
No, so lecture will come back afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
No, we wanted to hear you for the inaugural part. So lecture will come back.
I will thank you, and all the best for your inauguration. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Alaknanda. So I have a few people who are going to speak out of those 30 team. First of them is John Solomon. John Solomon is associate professor at Manipal University. He's a physical therapist. Professor Solomon.
Thank you, Dr. Nirmal Surya, and thank you, team of IFNR, for giving me this opportunity. I will recall a study that we did a few years back, which we published also in Canadian Journal of Physiotherapy called Facilitators and Barriers to Using Neurological Outcome Measures in Developed and Developing Countries. We had checked all the differences in Canadian therapists and Indian therapists. What are the facilitators and barriers? And one major barrier stood out when it came to Indian therapists, and that was unavailability of the assessment tools. And this is a major barrier. Many of them could not access tools, and because of which they do not use it either in clinical setups and research use as well. And in that regard, I would appreciate Dr. Urvashi Shah, who has taken up the lead, brought us together. And I thank Dr. Nirmal Surya and Dr. Abhishek Srivastav and all for their leadership and the team of members, where we came together and have brought out this KAR. And this is just a beginning. We have just initiated. We, as earlier said, this will be a platform over which we'll build on more opportunities to learn, knowledge base, and also help to identify, adapt, and create contextual scales that are appropriate for Indian setting. Thank you all for the opportunity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Solomon and John. And I have next is Sonal Chitnis. He is Associate Professor at Bharati Vidyapeeth, Pune. She is a speech and language pathologist. Sonal.
Thank you so much, sir. It's a privilege to be a team member of IFNR and represent a task force member. The idea from the IFNR team, which has come to that we need to have some resources in terms of scales of ICF-based models we need to provide to the clinicians working in India. Like in my field, for the speech language pathologist who work for the speech, language, swallowing, communication. So we have a huge variety of test material available. However, not everybody at institute level and the hospital level or a clinical level have those access to the test. So some of the people don't even know what test we need to use. So it was a great idea to team up together with all the interdisciplinary team members and form a team, come to the consensus, what are the best practices for the scale to use, which can help us understand what is the requirement of the patient, what are the abilities post the neurological conditions, and what could be done to address the therapeutic intervention and how we can chalk the outcome. So it was a great efforts, and with less time, we all formed a good team. And Dr. Surya sir, Abhishek sir, and Urvashi ma'am were a great help. And we had come up with the scales where we had tried putting some scales which can help clinicians understand what could be used, and they need to be developed or adapted in our own biodiverse culture. Like India is a bilingual in a country, and then we need to understand the cultural aspects also while adapting the Western tools. So this was a good effort, so first step. So I hope everybody likes the tool. We get a good feedback from you. I will appreciate the feedback from the participants. Thank you so much, the team. It was great working with you all.
Convener, thank you, Sonal. And we go to the next, the convener for OT team are Murli and Aishwarya. So first Murli and then followed by Aishwarya.
Good afternoon, everyone. I take this opportunity to wish you all a very happy Teachers' Day in India, because Nirmal sir is my role model and fatherly figure for me, who has shaped me in this field. So I take this chance to thank all the members in the IFNR for bringing up this concept of repository. Why we joined hands in this repository is because making sure everybody gets a research tool, assessment tool, because that's the biggest part when we, a student or a clinician or a researcher trying to assess somebody or involve into research. So having all the scales together in one platform will help them to find it and work on the area. And this will improve the clinical practice and the research. Through that, we will work on the health of the community. So that's the whole part of it. I thank my occupational therapy team who have supported me in all the areas. And this also brings the responsibility on us to be on our best, to bring the best scales and present it in a right way, verify it and validate it before giving it to the public platform. Thank you so much, everyone.
Aishwarya.
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank Nirmal Surya sir, with whom I've been working for many years in the community-based neurorehabilitation field. Sir always talks about multidisciplinary approach towards the neurorehabilitation. And even here, this is a multidisciplinary team which has come together, which has put together the repository. And this was a very good opportunity. I would like to thank Surya sir as well as the leadership of Abhishek sir, Urvashi ma'am and Taral Nagda sir. And for myself, this was a very good opportunity since I got, this was also a learning experience in a way, if we can say, and I learned a lot as well as working with different team members. And it has come out very well, like everybody did their part. And then we incorporated the ICF model also in terms of classifying these scales, as well as the main focus was how these scales can be utilized in the Indian context. The relevance in India was more important. And as well as availability of these scales in terms of public domain scales, so that what John Solomon sir was also saying, the availability of scales seems to be an issue in India. So that was also taken care of in terms of this repository. So overall, it was a very good opportunity. And then I see a very good scope for this repository to flourish and then spread its main vision and mission, that is spreading knowledge in the area of neurorehabilitation. Thank you.
Thank you, Aishwarya. I want to tell you all that it is not about the seniority or the experience that is the convener. And you will find that one of the youngest fellow here is Faiz Mohammed, who is doing his DMB in PMR rehabilitation. He is the first student of Abhishek Srivastav. And he is the convener for the rehabilitation medicine. And I would request Faiz to say a few words.
Thanks a lot for the opportunity that you give us, Hannah, and other kind words as well. I definitely like to thank Dr. Abhishek Srivastav and Dr. Nirmal for all these opportunities. Now, this work is mostly about that we use in as well as research practice. But eventually, the IFNR team, the colleagues, and the multidisciplinary team, I get important to further, involve the Indian context. We also plan to add those tests and we explain how to use them and link articles which we find effective.
I think his poor network. Faiz, all the best to you. And we have another youngster who is just finished her PhD, is Porselvi from Chennai, and she is the convener for the neuropsychology group. So may I request Porselvi to say a few words?
Hello, sir. Thank you so much for the opportunity. The task force has been a really dynamic and I speak on behalf of Shivani and myself. We are the team which put together the psychology tools, and we had a learning curve initially, and then it was a wonderful process where we learned a lot. And it has, as we have been mentioning, it's going to be an ongoing process where we keep updating. And the main thing that I would take from this repository is that we have so many tools in the public domain and so many good commercial tools which we can use for the Indian clinical and for the research purposes. And sometimes these get buried and among like the whole lot of tests that we have. So this repository has helped us identify which tests would work best for what, clinically and for research.
Okay, so you are we able to hear her now?
Everyone would benefit from it.
That she's back.
Thanks. All right, so we have, I would, correct his Faiz is third year student of Abhishek. So his final year appearing for the exam. post DNB. So we have, I have been hearing of one name all the time, and that is Preeti Shetty. She's been here. She's from the speech therapist team, but she has worked a link between the task force and the Bhavesh, because she has some knowledge about the website and she has taken all the responsibility. I would request her to say 1 minute, Preeti, and then we have the leader coming. As you know, that leaders are always come at the last moment, and our leader Taral Nagla has just been in. So after Preeti, he would be the one who would talk.
Yes, sir.
So we got
Good
7 more minutes. Huh?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I start, I would say Happy Teachers' Day to all. It's been a great pleasure to be part of interdisciplinary task force. As Dr. Uvashi said, that this repository is a hard work of all the team members. We have worked hard and is committed to bring out a repository that would benefit Indian researchers and clinicians. I do acknowledge that during this process, we have worked towards a repository. We have had an opportunity to think, rethink, and gain knowledge over many discussions. Thanks to IFNR, Dr. Surya, Dr. Abhishek, Dr. Urvashi, and Dr. Taral for the opportunity. Thank you so much, sir. We will have a great repository and we would work hard for it. Thank you.
So is that Dr. Dantala? I don't see. Thank you, Preeti. So, you know, this is one way. We are the team. We are the young and old like me as a team. And we need to look at not only the repository, but we need to look at how IFNR is going to help the neurorehabilitation in the country, not only for the people suffering with disability, but also for the students and other researchers. So that's our aim. So Taral, are you ready? You got 5 minutes, and then 2:30, I want to start the lecture of Dr. Banerjee.
Yeah, so do I start?
1 minute, just a minute, Dr. Banerjee.
Okay.
Taral, are you there?
Right. So, yes, sir. So I just want to say that this is a great foundation for the research in neurorehab, which is going to take place in future. And second thing I want to say is like how rehab is a dynamic process. Neurorehabilitation is also a dynamic process. This repository is also a dynamic process. It's not just for today, but we are going to have many more things added to the repository. And what I really want to do is capture the emotions of people who have worked behind this repository and bring to people. And we will do it in around a month's time. Once the repository is fully formed, the story behind the repository will also be released soon. With all the emotions which were behind it. So just keep waiting for it, and it's going to come up for our next academic sessions. Thank you, sir, for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, Taral. It has been, team has been absolutely fantastic. So before I start the next session, Professor Matilda, would you, after hearing to all these young guns, would like to give them some advice and guidelines? And tell us, how do we connect with the WHO? We should write to you or somebody, if you can tell us with easy to you.
Thank you very much. In saying bye-bye to all, and I apologize, but I have to take, and I have to move from where I am to Milano back again. I wish to all the people just to have a look at what is published, but also I provided you a link to the ICFeducation.org, where I think this repository could also link. We are collecting all the national initiatives that are going on around the world, and I think this could also be one of the initiatives that you can have a look at. And in the international community there, you can register to that link, and this provides you a link with the international ICF users community. And I think that the difficulties that you have with ICF is less than any type of study or exam that you did during your course. So I don't think that difficulty is something that is frightening any of us here. Just difficulty is part of life, and I think it's much more difficult to be a health professional than studying one instrument for health professionals. So I wish all of you to navigate in the difficulty and to use the ICF wherever you need to use it. And there are many possible opportunities. And I'm sure that we can have meetings thanks to Nirmal and to the Indian Federation, because there are many opportunities to join and to have scientific exchange and collaboration. And I think if I have to say one advice as an old doctor is follow your passion, and don't remember that your passion is people. And once you follow people, you will never be betrayed by your passion. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Matilda, very much on this Teachers' Day, guiding all our everybody. We learn, and you have been so kind with me always as a friend and as a colleague. Thank you very much for sparing your time and in spite of your schedule. Thank you very much. Bhavesh, can you share the introductory slide of Professor Alaknanda Banerjee? So I come to now the Indian branch of ICF, and Professor Banerjee has been therapist for more than 36 years, and she has already, as mentioned, she developed 3 projects, Apollo, Fortis, and Max. And she also has the one who started with comprehensive treatment protocol for dysphagia in an acute and chronic care. She was honorary faculty on innovative technology for biodesign students at IIT Delhi, and she has a lot of international and national publication. She's an expert in international classification of functioning WHO guideline and has undertaken numerous workshops on ICF across India. She now moved out from her routine work into a charitable organization where she has formed a Dharma Foundation of India, which is a charitable trust, and ICF India with the objective of promoting ICF education and researcher in India. She is Vice President of All India Senior Citizen Confederation and Vice President of Confederation of Resident Welfare Association. So on this Teachers' Day and on the introductory webinar of ICF model in neurorehabilitation in India, we have none other than Alaknanda Banerjee, who has been expert in this field. And I welcome you on behalf of my team as well as IFNR to listen to you about your experience on ICF in India and to guide us how we are we going on right direction to the people for this country. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Surya, so much for giving me this opportunity once again. And I would really understand, like where I left off, when I started, that, it's a passion. It's a passion for taking care of a patient, which is actually ICF. Yeah, it is definitely, I'm going to share my screen of the presentation. Okay. Okay, so what is the relevance of the ICF for India? Okay, and as we heard from Matilde, the different the whole process started in 1980, way back, where people started thinking of it's not the disease, but what's really happening after the patient has a disease, what's really happening to them in terms of their functions. So let me just go into understanding we had a lot of patients going in for total knee replacements. So and the surgeon used to say, okay, let's replace your knee. But then the part that was usually missed out, what are the comorbidities that this patient has? The patient may have Parkinsonism, the patient may have a COPD. Yeah, so that type of information was not really taken up holistically. So when I was in the hospitals, for 20 years, I found that somehow understanding rehabilitation, a holistic rehabilitation, whether it's a mental, psychological, whether it's a cognitive, whether it's speech, was never taken into consideration for a particular intervention that they were going through in the hospital. So what would really happen to this patient once he's back home? Because the objective of the intervention in the hospital was to sort of get rid of the problem that the patient has, like maybe pain in the knee. But really what happened later on was not really taken care of. So when I did the workshop, ICF workshop in 2007 in Holland, this was one of the test questions that was asked to us. What really happens to a cerebral palsy child who has a TA tight and would want to go for a TA stretching or a lengthening surgery, right? So, and then that was put forward to us. So we all thought that, maybe look at the motor power or the sensory power or the cognitive power, but the part that it really struck in my mind, which is really till today, that this child whom we assessed didn't have family support, didn't have the care at home. So obviously, taking the responsibility of the child after a TA lengthening process was going to involve a good amount of rehabilitation, and most of all important was the caregiver, support, and that was not there. So as rehabilitation, we said that no, this child cannot go through the surgery, even it may sort of help the patient for some time, but later on it will again lead to the tightness of the TA. So so then that is what ICF is all about. ICF is having a very futuristic understanding of the patient and the patient's functions. So with this in mind, we started, my journey from 2007. I started putting on the ICF, into our patients, of maybe a patient undergoing a breast surgery, or maybe a patient who is undergoing a cardiac surgery, understanding what are the expectations of the patient from the patient's point of view, So there is a language which is common between the patient and the doctor, right? So the expectation of the doctor when he counsels the patient, is absolutely, to the point that he doesn't say, you're going to start walking after 7 days, because ICF was taking a holistic information of that patient. So so in 2020, in the earlier of this year, after 13 years of working on ICF, I met Matilda in Finland, in Helsinki, where we had presented 3 of our posters, and so it has been a long journey. It's a very, very, very tedious part to understand that in a clinical settings, because I'm talking about the clinical settings that you are having in terms of neuro rehab, how are you really going to utilize the ICF for a patient, right? So our team members, as of now, who has undergone the faculty training by Dr. Catherine Sykes, and Catherine is also a colleague of Dr. Matilda. We have gone through the faculty course, and the team members are Dr. Snehal Dharmayat, Dr. Robin Kumar, Dr. Prashant Naik, Dr. Rakib Ali, and Dr. Jinal Naik. These are the young people. Dr. Snehal and Dr. Prashant are professors at the KLE University in Belgaum, and Dr. Robin Kumar is an occupational therapist in Delhi. Dr. Rakib is a psychologist in Delhi, and Dr. Jinal is again a physiotherapist at Belgaum. So this team of 6 people has come forward to get themselves trained under the best in the world, Dr. Catherine Sykes, and everything that we have learned is based on the icfeducation.org. So this is, I have put it on the slide, www.icfeducation.org. I would ask you all to go into this and see and understand, how we are going to use, ICF in terms of our clinical understanding of a patient, whether it is a speech therapist, whether it is a psychologist, whether it is a technician who is making orthosis, or whether it is a person who is going to be the caregiver of the patient, right? So all that information, how are we collating, in terms of functions of this patient? So what is the function all about? The function is all about the activity and the restrictions or limitations in the participation in the activity of that person. So let me again, before I go on to the aims and objective of ICF India, I would just go into saying that, again, this is an experience that, we did a survey in New Delhi, based on the ICF about the elderlies using toilets, the Indian toilets, and the elderlies having pain in the knee, right? So the elderlies who had the Indian toilet, they had to squat on the toilet. They have a severe problem with or limitation in their participation. So where is the activity? The activity is toileting. The participation of not being able to sit on that toilet was severely affected. When we looked into when we really assessed the anatomical and the physiological, part of this particular subject, that goes in the body structure and the functions, we understood that really the OA knees or the osteoarthritis knees was not so much of a problem, but the severity in participation was the problem, right? So what did we do as an intervention? That is coming to the environment. We said, why don't you all put a grab bar, in your toilets? Your participation will actually improve, because your body structure or the knee is not a big problem. But what is the problem is the participation. So believe me, 35% of these cases actually got better when we asked them to get the grab bar. It was as simple as that. So they were asked to go for a surgery, with not too much of a bad ONE, which we had to sort of again assess through a radiological assessment questionnaire. So when you're talking about linking, we need to link the problems, like suppose you have a heart patient who has undergone a CABG. So we have to take into consideration the different the blood gases, what is really happening to this patient, how much the patient can really function before I really make a goal. Yeah. So where does the intervention come from? The intervention can come from any one of us. It's a multidisciplinary. It can come for the surgeon, it can come from the physician, it can come from the speech, it can come from the psychologist, it can come from the physical therapist or the OT, yeah, or from the technologist or the person who's going to make an assistive device. Yeah. So the most important part that we actually could improve on our intervention was when we thought about the environment of this patient. Yeah. We were actually, it was awesome to understand that this patient, whom I feel as a healthcare provider, has got a muscle power of 4, but cannot climb stairs, right? So a person, maybe an 80-year-old person having a bad, knee arthritis, is not being able to climb the stairs but his muscle power is 4, right? So what would he need? Definitely he would need exercises, right? So we got on the real intervention. Or maybe if he has a muscle power of 2 and he has a bad arthritis, we would say, okay, go in for a surgery. Or maybe somebody in Italy would say, okay, I don't need to climb stairs, I have the lift. So I can do with the 2 muscle power because I have the lift. So how important it is to capture the social and the biopsychological part of this particular person who is going to have a better function, a better daily of life, a better participation in his activities, goes by the assessment of ICF. Yeah. So the goal and aim of ICF India is to help, first of all, to bring about ICF education in our different colleges. We have already been doing it in the past 10 years. In fact, I was part of the German faculty, Dr. Eva Grill and Dr. Alarkos Cieza, and we did one of the workshops at Sri Chitra in Trivandrum, and we had, I had talked about the Indian perspective, that how ICF is going to be a mind-boggling tool to understand the diversity of our country. So our environment, are so different. So I found people over here from the south of India, and we came over here from the north of India, and from the east. I'm from Kolkata, I stay in Kolkata, and the West. So how we have to think about our treatment and the intervention depending on the culture, depending on the family support, depending on the type of conditions that this patient is coming from, can be captured in ICF, right? So this is where we are going to do a multi-centric research from all over India and say that, okay, we cannot come down to the fact that all patients are same, So each one can be understood by running a small, ICF, assessment on them to understand their other conditions. So here is the third objective, to use ICF among multidisciplinary, multi-professionals as you are, and develop a collaboration and represent India. We have done ICF collaboration work with Singapore, we have done with Portugal, and we have done with Sweden. So we hope that, we will be able to do more such type of, national also type of a work where we can actually compare and help government policies or the WHO policies as to where the disability is and how the health of a person can really improve in the context of where they live. Okay, so yeah, so going back again by this, I will come down to what we in Dharma Foundation of India is doing. Like I said, it's a very interesting time that we have met. It is a pandemic time, and whether we are in Italy or whether we are in US or whether we are in India or in Australia, we all are going through a functional limitation, right? We are going through a functional limitation. I may be normal, right? I am very normal. I have no problem in my anatomy or my physiology, but I cannot go out. And if I go out, I need to use the mask and the sanitizer, right? And keep the social distance. So I need to now make that to improve my functions, in my daily activities, right? So the ICF doesn't only give you an information of people who have a problem, but it also gives you an information about what is the real crux of a particular society and how we can make the best use of the environment, of the people living there, into making them functional, right? So Kolkata has around 10.26% of elderly in Kolkata. So there are a lot of people who are not being able to go out, out of scare or they might be okay health-wise, but they are scared. So how do we really, percolate the information that how can we really get more functional in the coming circumstances? So one of the areas that we are working in Dharma Foundation, since we cannot meet them, we are doing the health literacy, which is our prime objective of Dharma Foundation, with the Zoom or with con calls. What we do is we are making literate on health. Some elderly, this work we are doing with the elderly, some elderly of an organization who are voluntarily want to understand about their health, right? So for the elderly, we have taken up few common diseases that they have, like like the knee problem, that like urinary incontinence. We have taken up, back pain, and we have taken up maybe vision problem because of eye. So some of the things where we are literating, not doctors, they are simple people, 60 plus, even we are taking now people who are less than 60, to really understand themselves, and one person goes and teaches the other. We are there behind the scene, helping them to percolate the health information in the community, right? So whenever they have a problem, they come back to us, and ask that, okay, Didi, what do we do? How do we go ahead? Yeah. So we are, taking them care, because as we understand, rehabilitation is not only about rehabilitating after a disability. Rehabilitation is also maintaining a person's function in his daily life, right? So that is what we are doing through the health literacy programs. coming to the ICF, okay? How are we using ICF in so what is our intervention? Our intervention is health literacy, right? So if you look into the environmental factors down there in your slide, you know, the environmental factors of an elderly who may have, you know, look into the body function and structures, may have cognitive function, may have hearing function, may have vision functions. This is just an example that I've taken up for you all, right? And what are the limitations? Applying the health knowledge and skills because they have a cognitive function impairment, or they may have a communication skills because they are hard of hearing. So where is the restriction that they have when they have these problems? They have a restriction in maintaining or handling their own health responsibility, right? So you can see the personal factors are from the ICF checklist. We can add that 2.A1. Their age, sex, rural or urban, or literate and illiterate. So come back into the environmental factors, okay? So what are we capturing from people who have this problem? We are capturing whether they have a health professional support, whether they have a family support, and most of all, what is our intervention? Our intervention is education and training. So the code word of education and training is E585. Okay. So each one of these that we have chosen is built on the type of people that we will be educating. Yeah. And they should, you know, they can educate these type of people who are having cognitive function, hearing function, or vision function. So it is important when you choose the ICF code to have a proper objective of what are you looking, where are you going to use your intervention. Yeah, accordingly you pick up your ICF codes, right? So when we are understanding this, I know this is for an you know, not one case study. I'll come down to an example of a case study. This is for a group of people. So remember, we have adopted one elderly organization, and we are choosing people to do health literacy on these people who have such impairments. What is our intervention? Our intervention is education and training. And we are also capturing the information whether they have family support and whether they have the healthcare professional support, right? So this is what one of our research that is going on. And the next one, which I think you will understand more, is about monitoring a stroke patient through ICF e-documentation tool. So ICF e-documentation tool is a part of the icfeducation.org. If you look into it, yeah, you have a stroke patient, like all of you have a stroke patient. Now the stroke patient has got aphasia, the stroke patient may have speech, yeah, or dysphagia, can have, like you have put on your different tools there, can have communication problems, cognitive dysfunction, yeah. So a stroke patient, I took up this just to sort of tell you that how will you choose the ICF codes, right? So you will choose the ICF codes based on the history taking of your patient. So all of you, you know, so the doctor, the physician first meets the stroke patients, and then, you know, the doctor will say, okay, let us go through an ICF assessment, yeah, based on the problems that the person is facing. So the doctor says, the physician says, the patient has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 problems, right? So these 5 problems are then given to the different multidisciplinary group, where you would pick up your own ICF code. But who takes the history? It is the consultant. It is the doctor who takes the history. Or the doctor can ask a physical therapist or an occupational therapist to take a history. A history is very important for us to be able to then select the codes from the ICF. As you have known from the ICF education that there are code sets. So there are code sets for maybe one, there are comprehensive and brief code sets. So the comprehensive ones are for mainly for research sake. The brief ones are for maybe for a clinical practice. So now the physical therapist, the doctor has sent the physical to the stroke patient to the physical therapist, and the physical therapist. So this particular assessment has been done by a physical therapist. So he saw that what is my short-term goal and what is my long-term goal, right? So the doctor has said, the stroke patient will come to our rehab for 3 months. So please make your goals, right? So the patient, definitely I want to make the goals, but before I make the goals, let me do my assessment. So look at the categories: body function, goal, test value, intervention, outcome, right? So the body function is again the body structure, the muscle tone. As we all know, a stroke patient may have higher tone or spasticity. So again, I would take the B735, and then this is my goal 1. Yeah, because I want to improve the spasticity. So test value is 1 plus by 4. What is this test value? Test value can be a modified Ashworth scale, right? So you all know, right? So I would again go into the muscle tone. I would go into the intervention that I think as a physiotherapist is important, and how I would see the outcome improvement, you know, and how much time that I would take to improve the person's spasticity. I would also need to understand whether the patient has been given Botox, or the patient has been given any sort of an anti-spastic drug, you know, so that can also improve my type frame. Maybe if the Botox is given and I am improving the spasticity in this stroke patient, then I might not take 4 weeks, I might take maybe 2 weeks to get to improve on my tone of this patient. So when I am looking into the muscle tone, like your hip flexor, I am looking, you know, where is the activity that the patient will improve on. So come down to the activity and participation. See that 450, D450 is walking, right? So if I improve the hip flexor tone, the patient may improve on the walking. So what is the limitation? The patient cannot participate in walking. So my role as a physiotherapist would be to improve the modified Ashworth scale, and therefore improve the participation in the activity of walking. Yeah. So that is how the modified Ashworth score, that particular score or the questionnaire, is linked to the function that I am expecting in this particular patient, right? So 1 by 4, again, it has to be qualifier, and, you know, so you have to do that total ICF workshop to be able to understand how would you qualify, how would you score the patient. And then there are other areas also we have taken into consideration: muscle tone, power, mobility of joint function. Yeah. So these are the parts that I would want to improve in maybe a time frame of 1 month. And what will be my long-term goal? My long-term goal will be to improve balance, to improve functional independence, and to improve walking without device. Yeah. So that is how the ICF is going to help as a common language with the doctor and the physical therapist and the occupational therapist, all the 3 people wanting to make this patient walk in 3 months. So what is the language? The language is of the ICF. The language is where is the patient right now. The language, first and foremost, more than our language, it is the same language of the patient. So the patient knows that he has to do the exercises at home, take the medications at home properly to be able to achieve this participation in the activity that is being limited. Yeah. So this is what ICF is all about. And I would again go back into your, I think this is what I really wanted to say, you know. So what is important in this stroke patient, I would just go back to the previous slide, the environmental factors, right? So if you have this patient of stroke who has to now climb, you know, 1 flight of stairs. So definitely my participation in staircase climbing, you know, will take a little bit more time. So I will tell him, you can actually walk in 3 months time, you know, little bit, or whatever you are expecting. That scoring is also there. What are you expecting, you know, in the terms of his participation in walking? And you would also want to actually tell him that once you are being able to climb the stairs, in how much time will that take? So when we are having such a goal, when we are having such a focus on the future, or a visionary goal based on the ICF scores and our different scores that we are using, we can actually reduce mistakes in medication usage, and more emergency visits, more hospitalization, and higher risk of death. Yeah. So the literacy, the post care of a patient, you know, the rehabilitation that we are all going to take care of, you know, whether it's the speech because the patient is not being able to communicate, whether it's the psychologist who feels that the patient, because he is not being able to speak, is definitely getting jittery and is getting stressed. So all the same common language would come into place in this particular structure.
Dr. Banerjee, your time is very short, so you could.
I have
hurry up,
ended it.
please.
It's done.
Okay. Thank you very much. So,
thank you so much.
Dr. Abhishek.
I need to just thank you, Dr. Surya and Dr. Matil, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Maji. There are two questions for you.
Yeah, sure.
The first question is, do activity and participation go hand in hand, or we have to separate them as separate links?
Activity, जैसे हिंदी में बोलेंगे, activity is that I am supposed to be doing, right? I am 60 years old. That's my age. Now I can definitely climb stairs, right? Because I don't have ONEs. So my participation in stair climbing becomes the activity for me. So my participation is limited if I have got ONEs as a 60-year-old. Now, if I am 80-year-old, then definitely my participation in staircase climbing will be lesser, right? So the activity is the activity in that particular structure or the particular environment that the patient is in, and the participation is the limitation or the barrier, or, you know, whether the environment, because I don't have a lift, I cannot go down. So I cannot go down or climb stairs or can't go for walking because, you know, the staircase is too steep or the body is not that strong. So it becomes a barrier. So the barrier and facilitator, as Dr. Matil explained, is in terms of my environment. Yeah.
Another question from Jude.
Yeah.
How could any strategy to educate politicians, schools, college, society about ICF model implementation? How can they contact you to take it forward?
Yeah. So let's take a metro, subways, right? So let's take a metro and we can do a survey in this metro. How many people are being able to really, you know, utilize, or maybe plus 60 years. Now, some metros may not have a lift. They might have escalators. So whether it's a barrier for these people 60 plus, you know, that can be put forward to the government. So then they can implement a lift along with the escalators in the metro.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions or, yeah?
Anybody from the team want to ask something to Dr. Alaknanda?
Another question from Jigna. If we mainly use task-oriented approach for treatment, activity, and participation, does it automatically take care of the ICF model as such?
The task cannot be the same for two people. Like I said, I am 60 years old. I might have another 60, you know, same age might like me, but may not be able to perform a task like I am, because it depends on the different factors. That is what this biopsicosocial factor is. It depends on where I stay, what is my anatomy, what is my muscle power. Yeah, so it depends on everything.
Another question from Chetan. When to consider personal factors in rehabilitation?
Personal factors are actually, right now, there are no personal factors except for the ICF checklist. We can add on the age, sex, you know, the education, the family support there. Yeah. So we can do that as a part of our checklist about the patient. Yeah.
Another question, does ICF provide a guide? Does ICF provide a guide for the relevant outcome measures for each component?
Yeah, it's a score. Like I said, the scoring is HUDAS, where you'll be able to really say how much of disability is there. The ICF gives us a focus on the function. Like I told you about that example about the cerebral palsy child, whether he should go in for a TA lengthening or not, depends on the different supports that he really has, right? So definitely it's a holistic approach to this child who needs to have a TA lengthening, depending on his environment, his economic structure, which can be coded, taken out the codes from the ICF. Yeah. And there are code sets for all this. And the e-documentation tool, you can actually choose your code as per, your history taking of the patient.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question? Any other questions?
So if we don't have any more question, Dr. Rantala has now got in. We missed you during the inaugural session, Dr. Rantala.
Yes, sir.
I think the environment part is the one which is still empty, so you'll need to work hard with. There is some other orthotic from AIPMR, that associate professor. Why don't you get him involved and work on this?
Yes, sir.
Faster
Sir,
than
yeah, based on this ICF model, to my knowledge, there has been a very less work done on ICF model on the orthotic devices like mobility aids. As Dr. Banerjee was speaking, the long-term goals, we have to basically concentrate on the orthotic aids, like she said, the elevated seats or Western commodes or the barriers for the access. Very few work has been done on the base of ICF models. Really, we have to work into it and then come out with some more research work. There has been some work on KFOs on ICF models for the stroke patients, and for upper extremity prosthetics, there have been some work on ICF models, but still there is a long way to go. And this is a stepping stone. What we have done, we will try to gather more information and then.
Yeah, absolutely. So the assistive devices will be coming into the environmental factors. What are the technologies? As you have also heard of functional electrical stimulators, or you have heard about the different EEG, EMG models which are coming up in the market, how it is going to be relevant for the patient actually can be decided from the ICF assessment. Yeah?
Yes, we need to really work into it, and then we'll give the inputs in due course of time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
less work means less availability means more opportunity.
Right.
Yes, sir.
So is there anybody else has anything to say before I hand over to Abhishek for thanking business? Urvashi, are you there?
Was Taral doing something?
I'm there.
Would you like to summarize and give the guidelines for future in next 1 month time?
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. That was a wonderful illustration, especially with the cases. The model is there. We read the model, but it becomes very theoretical. But when you actually illustrate it with a case and give the various components, it just brought it out wonderfully. So thank you for that. And I just want to say, Dr. Banerjee, that we would really, really want to talk to you. We were planning to do it before, but as I said, that 6-week window, we were just so intense. And that September became like a thing on our head that we should do it on 5th September. But we'd like to chat with you because as I understood from everything from Dr. Leonardo and you and everybody who works in ICF, the primary thing is about the patient, that holistic approach, that every aspect of the patient is looked after and from the multidisciplinary angle. Now, what we use it for a tool assessment, like what we were trying to do is something that is not commonly talked about. It's talked about from the intervention model. But here the attempt was more to, in fact, drive the professionals to think, because the first time we began to think, there was an aha moment amongst professionals that, oh my God, when we think of evaluation tools, we're only thinking of impairment and the B codes. We don't incorporate the D and the E codes at all when we're thinking of the evaluation of the scales, which are standardized. So that aha moment led to, it was almost like you're doing an analysis. So in my mind, and I may be completely wrong, and we will talk about this, is that using this tool system and trying to code, an attempt was that when I have a patient and I very easily, because being a clinician, lean towards the B code tools and the impairment tools, I have to think that for every patient, I have to holistically evaluate and bring in even the D component, even the E component, and use standardized tools to do a good evaluation. Of course, the checklist is there as a qualitative thing and to do it. But if I want to use standardized tools, I must bring in many, or at least I must work with a team with someone assessing those components and put it all together.
So what is most important is the history taking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once you get the history, you'll get the codes.
Correct. Correct.
You know, we as students had really, you know, maybe in the third year or something, we were always said, history. Focus on
very
history.
Very good history is the key thing.
Is the key to ICF. Is the key to ICF.
But we'll talk to you.
Sure.
And we'll see how, whether this can be done or not be done, and how to put it up in the repository, how to explain it, and use that.
We'll do it.
So thank you very much for that. And of course, so we can all collaborate and look forward to doing this. Thank you very much.
There's a lot of things to be done.
So Nirmal,
thank you very much. And I move to Abhishek Srivastava for final words from him.
Thank you, sir. So as Secretary of IFNR, it's my duty to propose a vote of thanks. I would like to thank Dr. Nirmal Surya, President IFNR, for his vision, his constant guidance, enthusiasm to do something new, and pushing us to make the thing happen in a due course of time. Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. Thank my gratitude Dr. Urvashi Shah, convener ICF Car Repository, for her hard work, great coordination to all the team members, and doing the whole task in a short span of time. She's always smiling, but she gets the work done in time. I especially want to say thank Urvashi for keeping faith in the ICF model. It's not a difficult time we had, but we kept our foot straight. We will do it the ICF way in the best possible. Thank you, Urvashi, for that. I thank you, Dr. Tarul Nagda, our co-convener, for making all difficult things happen, creating the beautiful artwork, all the technical know-how he knows how to make simple things on the web page. Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. Thank you to all the coordinators, Faiz, John, Murli and Aishwarya, Sonal, Poriselvi, Dantala, and all the task force members for their brilliant work. I know how difficult it was. Night 12 o'clock, getting messages at 12 in the night. Do something, get the artwork. You've done very good work. We really appreciate.
Abhishek, can I request Bhavesh to just show the team members this thing? Because many of them, we have not named them, but they have worked hard along with the convener. So Bhavesh, can you put the web page where all the members has been there?
Credit to technical team, Preeti Shetty, lot of hard work Preeti has done. Double work of SLP work as well as the artwork thing with Hitav, Bhavesh and Prasanna to take it forward. Thank you, Professor Matilda Leonardi, accepting my invitation, giving a brilliant talk on ICF model. Thanks to Dr. Lakshmana Banerjee, again taking the offer to speak on ICF model in a very short span of time. My thanks to Professor Mendirata and Professor Gagandeep Singh, who were able to come for the inaugural function and make it happen. They always support IFNR activities. My thanks to all the participants who were given their time on a Saturday afternoon. 100 people today were there to listen to the webinar and do things. I had to name everyone I could thank, but I left anyone's name. It's my fault. Kindly bear with me. And I hope all of us will work together in future to make it even a bigger dream and take it forward in a big way in due course of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Bhavesh. Thank you.
So with that, we again meet whenever Urvashi orders. The next meeting is on whichever days he says. And I want to thank everybody.
Thank you. Thank you to all the participants who we can't see. There are 85 still left after this long session. Thank you very much. We will work towards fine-tuning it and putting it up there, and we hope you will visit and then you will give us the feedback, because this is an ongoing process, as we have said again and again. We'll keep refining it. We need your feedback to be able to make it. The ownership of this repository is not even just for these 30 people and all of us. It's for the entire country. It's for all of us to contribute. so that we create something that can be used by everyone. Many of the developing countries, everyone can turn to it to learn. And I hope you all will create many more indigenous tools which will appear in the repository, and we will have a strong evaluation tools which are entirely useful and for India. So with that, thank you. And a very big thank you to Dr. Surya, Dr. Srivastav, because Dr. Surya has really, I just said, what about doing a repository? And the next thing I knew was he said, do it. And he's always a person who, once he gives you a job, he never interferes. And I think that allows you to work well. Dr. Srivastav has always been very supportive. Dr. Nagra has, of course, been superbly creative and supportive. So this work would not have been possible. And of course, this phenomenal, dynamic young team. I thoroughly enjoyed the differences of opinions that came up, the kind of consensus we had to walk through and go through, but they were fabulous. So thank you, all of you. Thank you.
At this time, those people who are here, I just wanted to say that if
anybody
anybody is...
to the team, I must say, the journey has just begun.
Urvashi, I just wanted to tell these people who have attended, obviously they are very much interested in part of it. If some of them who is very actively involved and want to contribute, they can always write to ifnr2012@gmail.com, and we will be happy to have you collaborated with us. It is always, we look forward to the people who can contribute and who have zeal to contribute. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Meet again.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.